Hi, this is Bobby Rio, and this is another one of our lessons on how to keep a conversation going. And this video is titled 12 Attraction Building Conversation Topics. In it, we're going to be going over tools, strategies, and mindsets for attracting beautiful women. What to expect in this video. This is going to be a how-to guide for keeping a conversation interesting. We're going to give exact topics and what to say and do, and the attitude and the way you come across as you say or do it. So why is this important? Well, I've been teaching men how to improve their conversation skills and learn to talk to women in an attractive way for several years now. And one question seems to keep coming up over and over again. And that question is, what do I talk about? It doesn't surprise you, does it? If you spent any amount of time in the dating world, then it's highly likely that at some point you've experienced that frustration of running out of things to say, hitting those awkward silences, and also just struggling to find topics of conversation that are not flat out boring. I call this the "what do I talk about" syndrome. And it stems from the fact that most men have no clue what are good conversation topics and which type of these topics are conducive and help generate attraction rather than just bore a woman and repel her. So by now you probably realize that interview mode never leads to attraction, but you're probably still wondering, what the hell do I talk about to fill in all that dead air with a woman, and what conversation topics will actually lead to her feeling attraction towards me? I'm going to give you some conversation ammunition throughout this entire video. But before I get into the actual topics, let's talk about why it's important to introduce the topics into your conversation with women. I already mentioned interview mode. Interview mode usually stems from guys having no clue what to say next, so they revert to asking boring, fact-based questions about the woman's job, her family, or her hometown. Things like, do you have any siblings? Where did you go to college? What made you decide to be a nurse? The main problem with these types of questions are that they're generic. They don't separate you from the hundreds of other guys who've probably asked very similar, if not the same exact questions. Nor do they ignite any emotions or feelings of attraction. And conversation must move forward on an emotional way, not just on a very boring, logical way. Yet because you don't know what topics to talk about, you continually let the woman lead you into this dead-end trap of conversation. Women, they don't have these kind of videos. Most of them aren't watching videos like this. They haven't studied this. So the conversation that they know is just the conversation that other boring guys have been shelling at them. So if you let them lead, that's the kind of conversation that they're going to give back to you. So you have to take the lead. Having a repertoire of topics that you can unleash at any moment allows you to keep this control of the conversation. If you read my Gary Knowles story in the Small Talk Tactics report, that's the story where I was hitting on that chick about talking about health food, then you saw how I easily handed over control of the conversation to her. And for the next hour, I was stuck talking about health food until I walked upstairs and caught her giving one of my buddies a hand job. If you don't have ammunition to keep a conversation flowing naturally towards your objective, she's going to start steering the conversation towards something safe, something boring, and you'll probably wind up in the same position, catching her giving one of your friends a hand job later. Ultimately, though, the most important reason to have a pocket full of sexy topics is that it's going to provide you a level of conversational confidence. You're going to be less likely to fear approaching a woman because you're not going to have that nagging fear of, what do I talk about? Throughout this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what to talk about and also how to bring these topics into the conversation. The number one fear that's probably holding you back if you're struggling to approach women is that you're fearing that awkward silence, or you're fearing running out of things to say. But if you can inject your consciousness with these 12 topics that we're going to be going over in this video, you're going to find that you'll become naturally quick-witted and you'll naturally find yourself talking to women wherever you are. It'll just start to flow from you. So first, let's talk about the 6 main traits that good topics possess, because I don't want to just hand you over 12 topics and not explain why I chose these topics. So let me explain what a good topic should do. The first thing a good topic should do, and kind of like the first point on the ladder, is that it should build rapport. This means the topic allows you and the woman to relate to each other on some level. It gives you an opportunity to build trust with her and to foster a connection with her. Once a woman finds that you have some level of connection with her, she's going to let her guard down a bit and be much more open to continuing the conversation. However, and I stress this, you don't want to get stuck on rapport building topics. Rapport building topics are the initial ones. They're the ones to just kind of create the connection, but you got to keep moving up the ladder. Because if not, rapport building questions could very quickly turn into he's a nice guy or I just see him as a friend sort of vibe. So you want to make sure that the topics also cover these other traits. A good topic should create an emotional state. Most of us walk around in what I refer to as a boredom trance. The daily grind keeps us void of any real emotions. So we walk around and we're just hungering for real emotion. This is why the entertainment industry is a multi-billion-dollar a year business. It satisfies our craving for an emotional state. We go to the movie theaters just to get out of the boring day-to-day mundane life that we all live. If you choose topics that ignite these lost or repressed positive emotions, the woman you're talking to will be putty in your hands. She's sick of being bored. She's looking for excitement. I mean, you know, women, they watch shows like Desperate Housewives. They watch shows like soap operas like General Hospital. They're just looking for something to just capture their attention. And if you can come up with topics and you choose the topics that we're going to be going over, you're going to be giving her something that she's craving, which is going to make talking to her a lot easier. The next trait, a good topic should make you three-dimensional. Now, this is really important, and it's something that's just not stressed enough. When a woman meets you, she has trouble differentiating you from the hundreds of other hound dogs who've approached her over her life. And it's easier for her to group you in with all of them and reject you than it is for her to open up and give you a chance. This is why it's important that you immediately introduce topics that'll create a unique identity for you. And it's even more powerful to add some contradictions to your identity. For instance, if you're the intellectual thinker type, you might also let her know that you're an MMA fighter. This will not only make you unpredictable, but it also allows her to imagine herself having fun with you on different type of scenarios. It's like when you watch a movie. What characters are the most interesting? Are they the ones that are the exact stereotype of what you imagine that character to be, or are they the one with some interesting traits? And one of the ways that you connect with a woman is by letting her picture what you're like outside of this bar environment. Because inside of a bar, it's very easy for her to just group you in and just imagine you as another beer guzzling guy trying to get in her pants. But when you start talking about things that show that you have a different side to you, in her mind she sees you in these different environments, and it gives her a more three-dimensional view of what you are. So you want to make sure that a topic helps you present this three-dimensional side to you. The topics that we're going to go over in this video, they do that. The next trait, a good topic provides hooks to keep a conversation going. Ultimately, you want to get her to open up to you. You want her to get her to express her emotions and become invested in the conversation. The best way to do this is to provide hooks for you to chime in. This means that a good topic acts as bait to hook her into becoming more emotionally involved in the conversation. Now, in previous videos, I've talked more in depth about this concept of baiting a woman and hooking a woman. But you want to use topics that are are very good for baiting and for hooking. And I'm going to point out as we go through the 12 topics which of the topics are really great for this. So just keep in mind, though, that you don't want to be stuck on topics that you can't move easily to another topic. A good topic allows you to display your attractive qualities. There are certain characteristics that women universally find attractive. These characteristics include being pre-selected by other women, social proof, leader of men, worldly, passionate, fun, and adventurous. The more of these characteristics a topic allow you to display, the better. Now, the reason you want to choose appropriate topics to display these is because if you claim these sort of things, if you go up to a woman and be like, yeah, I'm really a leader amongst my friends really see me as a leader, you're going to sound like a lying bastard. If you say things like, oh, I'm really passionate, or I'm adventurous, show her, don't tell her. So you want to choose topics that allow you to show her these traits. Because if you try to tell her, it's just going to come off as bragging, try hard. You're just going to sound like you're full of shit. And finally, a good topic leads to sexuality. If your goal is to create sexual attraction in a woman, then ultimately you need to begin to build sexual tension. And the topics of your conversation must allow you to do this. This means that a good topic should be visceral. It should lend itself to touching and should produce an undercurrent of sexuality. This is something that, a lot of people think that to get sexual, you got to be talking about something like blowjobs or the physical act of sex. But there's topics that lend themselves to sexuality, topics that aren't necessarily about sex, but make sex very much a part of the conversation in an unsaid sort of way. And we're going to talk about which of the topics do that the best. So what are the 12 topics? The 12 topics are glorified gossip, early years and childhood memories, future ambitions, observations about her, unusual experiences, passions and interests, struggling to get ahead, current pop culture references, travel, lessons learned, situational observations, and music. So, let's go through each of these topics and explain why it's good, give some examples of what you can say to bring these into conversation, and also what role each of these topics performs, because each of them have lend themselves more to certain aspects of what you're trying to create. Some of them are better for rapport, some of them are better for attraction, some of them are better for sexuality. So as we go through them, I'm going to let you know which fit into which role. So the first is glorified gossip, and the reason I listed this first is because this is a great topic to start with. This is what a lot of guys use, especially in the pickup artist community. This is what a lot of the PUA routines and openers are based on. Glorified gossip. Let's first explain what it is for those of you who might not understand. It's stories and gossip about people you know, or something that happened to one of them. The drama going on in one of your friends' life or your coworker's life. It's anything that deals with relationships, sex, weird twists. Think Jerry Springer. It's highly charged. It's not topics that are like very mundane sort of things. It's things that have a little bit of fire to them. It's things that capture her attention. And the reason that these topics work so well is for a few reasons. One is that when you introduce a highly charged topic, a topic that evokes opinion, women and men, I mean, we love to express our opinion on things. It's just natural. Like, we love to be heard. We love to say what we are. We're all critics at heart. We all want to talk about why we hated a certain movie, why this person's a jerk, why this person's cool. We just love expressing our opinion. It's a means of expressing aspects of our personality, and people very rarely let us flat out talk about ourselves for an hour. So by talking about somebody else, it's giving us a chance to actually talk about ourselves because we're expressing our opinions. So glorified gossip's a great way to engage a woman because you're giving her a chance to express her opinion on something. If you use the right one, it also provides a hook, which keeps her going. An example that I've used in the past is I had a friend who was chatting on the internet for about a year with a girl, and every time that he was supposed to meet her, for some reason she would back out. I mean, first it was Thanksgiving, she was supposed to fly in to see him. She was actually from a different part of the state. This was in California. And she was going to fly up to see him for Thanksgiving. And then at the last minute, she bailed. And then she was supposed to meet his parents, and then she bailed. And every time, online they would chat and everything. So, what do you think was going on there? Do you think it was some bored housewife? Do you think that the girl was just freaky? Do you think it was one of his friends playing a trick on him? That told better makes a really interesting story to talk to a woman about. Not necessarily as an opener, but just as a, it could be anything. If Facebook comes up in the conversation, you can tell that story. And what's great about glorified gossip and talking about things like this woman, my friend's relationship with this woman, is because it's very easy to then say, what about you? Have you ever had this sort of an anonymous relationship with a guy over the internet? Where do you usually meet guys? Do you have any friends like this? What's great when you're talking about this glorified gossip about your friends, your friend's life, your coworkers, is that it's very easy to then switch the conversation to her and say, what about you? Or you can even preface it by saying, do you have any friends like this? And then if she says no, you can say, what about you? It's a great way to create a quick connection, get a hook in there, engage her, and also introduce some spice into the conversation. The next topic is early years in childhood. And this is great because, first off, if something stands out vividly in your mind, it's probably an interesting story, and it's probably going to come across as interesting to somebody you're talking to. More importantly, though, when you talk about early years in childhood, whether you're talking about yours or hers, is that your ultimate goal is to get her recounting her childhood experience. Our childhood is sort of this magical place that all of us, we have a floodgate of emotions involved when we think about our childhood, but we very rarely get to talk about them. It's just something that, especially the older you get, the further you are away from your childhood. So when you start thinking about it, just endorphins go off in your brain. It's just an unconscious thing that you just get this warm, connected feeling. And it's a real refreshing change of pace from the normal conversation a woman's going to have with a guy who's going to be talking about drinking, or he might be talking about job, he might be talking about, whatever. Chances are he's not talking about how he used to play manhunt when he was a little kid and how he had this girl that he had a crush on and he was chasing her and blah, blah, blah. These are things that, the ultimate goal is to get her talking about her childhood and getting her in a good place mentally. Now, this one, what's great about it is that it fulfills the requirement of making you three-dimensional. because you start talking about your childhood and she starts seeing you in another element. She starts seeing you outside of just you're just a guy in a bar. Now, if you bring up um, things that you both share in common, and if you grew up at the same time, there's going to be a ton of these. I mean, if you're talking to a girl and you bring up Smurfette, or depending on how old you are listening to this, you might have a different experience. I grew up in the 80s, so for me, like talking about Care Bears or Smurfette or Little Miss Princess, or playing Chutes and Ladders, or playing Hi-Ho Cheerio, or Hungry Hungry Hippo. All these words, I mean, these are just words that the minute you hear them, it snaps you into something. Like I said, I don't know how old you are. If you're younger, you may not have the same reaction to a word like Hungry Hungry Hippo, but if you grew up in that time period, it's just going to bring you back to just a time where you were just completely innocent and young, and had the world in front of you. And it's a nice place to be. And when you're sharing that with somebody, you're bonding a lot easier. You're also instilling the playground mentality in her. And that playground mentality is great for creating attraction, because you get to easily start teasing her and sort of move into that teasing in a little kid sort of way. One story that I usually bring up is I went to some nightmare sleepaway camps when I was young. I mean, my mom just picked the all-time worst sleepaway camps that you can go to. Whether it was a Boy Scout camp that I went to that made me swim in this water that was like drenched in seaweed, and I went to another camp where it turned out that, and this is that it was a camp for the mentally challenged, and my mom didn't realize when she signed me up for it. A lot of just weird, funny stories from my camp days, and I love bringing them up if I can into a conversation, because I've told them so much. I mean, I'm not going to get into them now, but I've told those stories so often that I found the little things. I know how to tell the story in a way that's going to get her laughing and get the vibe really good. And as we're going to talk about later, the key to making these topics work is to learn how to tell stories and perfect different stories that involve each of the topics. So let's get on to the next topic, which is future ambitions. Future ambitions are great because it's really one of the most powerful things you can do, and that's because it bonds you to her, it connects you to her. Not that many people will have asked her, where does she see herself? When will she know if she's successful? What are you striving for? Those are questions that when a woman answers them, she's sharing a part of herself that she hasn't shared with that many people. Maybe she shared it with a couple family members, maybe with a few of her really close friends, but chances are that's about it. So when she shares it with you, then she's somehow connected to you. And when you leave that bar or that party or that date, you're taking a part of her with you, and she knows that. She knows that she shared something with you. And because she shared it with you, human beings have a weird way of rationalizing, and once she shared this information with you, she's going to rationalize why she did it. She's going to go back in her mind and think, oh, I must have just had a connection with him. He got me talking about these things. It really gives you a glimpse of her soul, and she knows it. And once a guy's seen that, she's going to be less likely to let him slip away. Like I said, one of the ways to introduce this topic is to just ask a question like, so what are you striving for, and how will you know when you found it? How will you know when you found it is really great, because it's going to get her to imagining herself in the future and imagine what it looks like, and it's going to give her a real good feeling to see this in the future, to see this imaginary world she's in. It's also going to give you some clues as to how to work her. As evil as that sounds, as she's telling you these things, you're going to be learning things about her that you can now readjust your approach based on these things. So something to keep in mind. Um, One of my favorite topics is your observations about her. We all love observations about us. We love to hear what other people think about us. And women are extremely curious as to how they're being perceived by other people. So when you open up and mention these things to her and start telling her these things, it does several things. As we talked about in the hooks video, it definitely creates a hook. If you even vaguely say that's what I was thinking about, or that's who you remind me of, say that to a girl. That's who you remind me of, and see if she isn't instantly hooked. If she doesn't want to know if this person is a good person, if you see this person in a good way, a bad way, it's a very easy way to hook a person. Is to say something like, that's who you remind me of, or now I understand where you're coming from. It's just something where they're like, what? And then you tell them a little bit about themselves. It doesn't even have to be cold reading. I mean, cold reading is a little woohoo, mythical type of stuff. I mean, it could just be basic how you see them. One of the reasons that this is also not only great for creating hooks, but also fulfills the role of being creating attraction is because it lets you show off your social intelligence. And if you've gone through my Amplify the Attraction program, you know that social intelligence, any time that you can display social intelligence, it is extremely attractive to a woman. It's like crack to them. For them to know that you get it, that you're on the in, so to speak, that you're part of the in crowd, and that you understand things about women and human nature. It's very attractive. So making observations about her, and as you get better at them especially, you're going to be showing more and more of your social intelligence. It also opens up room for a statement of intent, for qualification, and for reward. This can easily lead to sexuality. When you say things like, that's who you remind me of, you can easily throw in there, that's why I'm so attracted to you, or that's why I'm finding you so sexy, or that's why I'm turned on so much. It's very easy to go from an observation about her to making a statement of intent, or to qualify her, make her defend herself, and then reward her, which helps you progress sexually. This is why it's such a great topic for transitioning to sex, because you get into talking about her and you can easily start qualifying her and getting her to open up to you. An example of this would be talking about the sort of vibe she gives off, or your initial impressions of her. She's going to eat that up. Unusual experiences is the next topic. This is basically any story where you've ever met someone famous or fascinating, or maybe something bizarre or intriguing happened to you, or someone you know. It's a mixture of facts and emotion. And what's really interesting is that when you recount the story, and you don't want to just tell the story as it happened, you want to talk about what you were thinking and how you were processing what was happening, because how we react in certain situations reveal our true character. So don't be afraid to let the woman into your thoughts, because this is how stories like this let her see aspects of you without you blatantly saying, I'm a leader of men. Here you can tell a story of how you reacted to something and what you were thinking, and and it gives her glimpses of your character, makes you three-dimensional, and gives you a chance to express some of those attractive qualities. An example, I had a reader of TSB magazine who I became friendly with online, just a good guy, and I wound up doing a retreat, and he wound up sending me like $8,000 cash, and then wound up sending me and my partner $10,000 in watches, and never wanted to meet us. Now, it was just a really fascinating story that makes for very interesting conversation. It also, at the same time, allows me to say things about myself without flat out saying them. It allows her to say, "Wow, this guy, he's got guys on, that read his magazine that are like so that he's helped so much that they're sending him, gifts, and it lets her see things about me without me having to say them." That's an unusual story or experience. You want to just search your life for things that have happened to you, people you've met that you've come across that are interesting. Passions and interests. This is great because it gets you out of your boredom trance. And chances are when you're talking about something you're passionate about, you're going to come across as highly attractive to women. Women dig passion. I know it sounds like a cliche, but passion is one of those things that women actually are attracted to. They say they want a guy who's passionate, and they do. Why do they love passion so much? I think it's because it shows that you have a level of certainty. The fact that you're so passionate about something shows a woman that you've got clear values. It shows her that you can make up your own mind. And it shows her that you have the confidence to make a decision. But beware, because so many of us lack passion in our lives, we feel threatened by other people's passions. And women are often going to try to shit test you about them. This means that a woman will often try to turn you against your passion to see if it's legitimate. If you ever read the book The Fountainhead, you'll know exactly what I mean. Women are going to shit test you. If you're talking about how much you like golf or traveling or writing or classic cars or building your business, she's going to probably throw in an insult or kind of see how legitimate you are. And if you're talking about how much you like golf and then she says, "Oh my God, golf is so boring," and then you automatically say, "Yeah, it kind of is, but it's all right," you've lost, because you've just showed her that you will bend your position to make her happy or to be agreeable. And if you're willing to bend on something you're passionate about, it shows her that you are a very weak character. So if you're talking about something you're passionate about, do not let her insult you, and do not become agreeable, even if she is against what you're talking about. You also want to get her talking about things she's passionate about, because just like kind of future ambitions, not that many people get to talk about the things you're passionate about because our friends are sick of hearing us talk about them. So when we find somebody that is interested, it'll open up. Now, you don't want to stay on passions and interests for so long, because it can become it can turn into just the conversation topic becoming more prevalent than the two of you are interacting. And the goal of any conversation is to make the interaction be the center of attention, not what you're talking about. But that being said, passions and interests, they're very, very good, especially early in the conversation, to get her warmed up and to get yourself warmed up as well. Early struggles to get ahead. People love these kind of stories. It shows a woman the nature of your character. It shows her what kind of guy you are. Some of those attractive qualities of, like, leader of men and stuff like that. It's very difficult to say it in the present time, but when you tell her a story and you base it in a past situation, it doesn't come across as much as bragging. It's more easily digestible. These stories can include the time you beat up the town bully, or how you slept in your car for 6 days because you were dead broke, only to later get the job of your dreams, or your struggle with cold calling clients, moving to a new city, or the first time you went snowboarding. People are bored, and if you talk about what's currently happening and you focus too much on yourself, it's going to bore people. But if you have a story where you faced a big obstacle and overcame it, it'll show a woman that you're talking to that you're not the sort of guy who backs down from a challenge. And it usually gives her a chance to recount some of her past glories. You get to say something like, "What about you? Did you ever have something that you thought you'd never be able to achieve and then you did?" And that's just a good feeling. It's something that she's going to want to talk about. Current and past pop culture. Sort of like the early childhood memories, it allows you to bond over a shared history. The fact that you're both fans of a TV show, although I don't recommend talking about a TV show forever, but the fact that you both can recite a few lines or a few of Barney's catchphrases from How I Met Your Mother or A Modern Family or The Office or any of these comedies, if you both can recite some lines from them, it shows her that you're three-dimensional, that you're actually a guy who is not just a guy who lives in a bar and comes out at night to seduce women. You're actually a guy who has nights where he's sitting on the couch watching TV and hanging out with his friends, and it's just a great way to let her see that side of you. It's also a great go-to topic. I mean, fact is no matter how much you prepare, there's going to be moments in a conversation where she doesn't give you much and you don't know what to say, and at those points, going into pop culture is a great way to keep the conversation going. It's a great way to just to get her talking too. You want to base your references and opinions. This gives you a way to express aspects of your personality about it, like saying something like, how great was the first Karate Kid? Not sure if women appreciate the Karate Kid as much as men do, but I remember about 5 months ago when the remake of the Karate Kid came out, it was an excellent conversation topic at bars. I would just start talking about how annoyed I was that they remade the Karate Kid, that it was a classic, and any girl who has seen the movie agrees, and it just becomes this like real nostalgic thing to talk about for a few minutes. Another example would, if you want to use pop culture as a way to find out things about her and move towards a sexual level, you can say something like, so would you ever date a guy like The Situation on the Jersey Shore? And you can even a better way to do it is to make a statement rather than ask that. Like, you totally seem like the kind of girl who would be all over The Situation if you walked in here right now. Great way to get the girl defending herself. Oh, I'm totally not into that kind of guy. Why would you think that? And then you can say, well, you got the Jersey haircut going, and you can just tell her things about yourself. So pop culture is not a great topic on its own, but you can use it to transition to references about her. You can use it to do just about anything. Early childhood memories, just different things. So pop culture, definitely great. Traveling. People love to talk about traveling. If you've ever met somebody who's just came back from a vacation, that's all they want to talk about. Women are also very attracted to men who travel because women love traveling. Everybody loves traveling, basically. So when you talk about your traveling, she begins to see you as the kind of guy that she can escape with, that you like traveling. The two of you can travel together. It's a form of escapism. The key here is to let her talk, though. Don't feel the need to jump in and immediately and tell her stories or brag about where you've been. Instead, use it as an opportunity to dig deeper into her interests, her desires, her passions, her worldviews. It's easy to transition travel into sexuality. One good story will do that. You can talk about how the women in Brazil was cool, but your girlfriend at the time was a little intimidated because she didn't like wearing the Brazilian bikinis. Would you wear a Brazilian bikini if you were in Brazil? Very easy to just kind of transition into something on a more sexual nature. The best way for you to talk about travel, though, is instead of recounting where you've been and being like, I've been here and here and here, just tell one unique story about one of your trips that gives her a glimpse inside the kind of guy you are. So keep that in mind. If you travel a lot, instead of just making a laundry list of the places you've been and how cool they are, tell a good story from one of your trips. Lessons you've learned, another great topic. These are anecdotes where you learned a good lesson. We all like to learn from other people's experiences. And if you start telling her if you start telling her a story, she's gonna listen. Since the object of your conversation though is to create a attraction, it's best to tell the story in a humorous way. This lets her see you as a fun guy. If you start telling a story about a lesson learned and you're dead serious, it could get a little like, yeah, this is too much for talking at a bar or a party. But when you do a funny story, it's great. I often tell the story of a boss who used to ride me hard at work. He'd give me a lot of shit. I'd recount some of the humorous and exaggerated accounts of what he would do to make my life miserable, and how later that same boss wound up recommending me for a promotion, and I realized he was testing me to see if I had what it takes. And I usually actually segue this into how women shit test men for the same reason. And it becomes, from talking about lessons learned, you can now talk about how women shit test men, display some social intelligence, and the fact that you notice that and you know about it. And it also allows you to start asking her things like, so, if a guy does this, what do you usually do? I bet you're like this. And you get to now transition into telling her things about herself. So lessons you learned is another great transition topic, another great way to give her a glimpse inside of you. Situational observations. These are where you're cold reading the people around you, where you're noticing funny things happening and pointing them out to her. This is just something for you to show off your sense of humor. When talking to a woman, it's definitely fun to spend some time people watching. It means you can cold read the people around you, or even better, create imaginary lives for them. If you get a woman who's into that and she jumps in, it's really, really fun. In order to use this effectively, though, you need to become quick-witted and get good at spotting humorous and ironic things. When you go out tonight or next time you're out, really practice. I mean, look around and get good at it. Get good at thinking quicker and being able to notice funny things. Because if you can do it, it's really, really good skill. Because a lot of times in a conversation, you hit these walls or you hit these points where you need something to talk about, and to be able to just look at somebody and make like a witty remark or notice something, it shows a lot of social intelligence. It shows her that things aren't going to get awkward between you. For instance, if you catch an older man with a really attractive younger date, you could say, is he rich or is she a prostitute? It's just a way to take something going on and make it a fun story, and it's also a way to bait her to things out of her. Like, for instance, you can say, well, have you ever been with an older man? You see something going on, like two couples on the if you say, like, I bet they're on a first date. Oh yeah, what was your worst date? It's a very good way to transition into something else and to move the conversation along. You notice something going on and then you relate it back to her. It is a great way to pry into her life a bit. And the last is music. Music is, it's not something I like to talk about a lot, but it's a great way to bond over shared musical interest. It works even better the more unique the music. So if you both like Coldplay, not that interesting. If you're both really into like 1920s jazz, a lot more interesting, a lot more unique, and the connection's going to be a lot stronger. But don't feel like you have to have the same taste, because if you have different tastes in music, it's an ample opportunity to tease her or to cold read her. If a girl is into like rap, I'm not into rap at all, but I love when women are into rap, because I have a few jokes I can make. I talk about how I can picture them thugging out, and just different jokes, different cold reads. Music's also a great way to amplify her emotions. Now, I have a video out you can find it on YouTube under youtube.com/make small talk section called Amplify Her Emotions, where I talk about how to dig in. So if a woman says she likes Beyonce, and you can say, what's your favorite song? When you were at the concert, if she's talking about a concert, so at the concert, what was the best part of the concert? and now she recounts being there and say, and then you amplify it by saying something like, yeah, that must have been amazing. Beyonce on stage, the crowd just going crazy, her just going nuts, and you put her back in that state. And now her emotions are amplified, and it's a lot easier to get her out of that boredom trance and actually create a connection and attraction with her when her emotions are at a peak state. So music is a final topic. Now, are there other topics that work well? Yes, there are. But is knowing these 12 topics going to make your conversations a lot more interesting? Hell yes. So let's go over some tips for implementing this, because knowing the conversations is one thing, going out and actually remembering to use them is another. So let's talk about some tips. First off is rooting. Root the topics by saying something that plants the seeds of what you'll say next. This is how you bring them into a conversation. For instance, if you want to begin talking about early childhood memories, you could say something like, you totally have this way about you that reminds me of my third grade teacher, Mrs. Robbins. Haha, I remember this one time in that class, she got so mad at one of the kids that she picked up a desk and threw it at him. You ever have a teacher like that? You see how you rooted it, saying that you have this way about you that reminds me of my third grade teacher. And what you did there was not only did you bring up early childhood memories, but you also brought up observations about her. So now you not only got her thinking about the childhood, but you also made an observation about her. You've also pried into her childhood to see if she's had similar stories. And all you did was root it by, you have this way about you. You can easily have said, the bartender reminds me of. You're just bringing up something by prefacing. If you just said something like, I had this third grade teacher who was so mean, it's not going to make sense. It's going to seem forced. But when you say, you remind me of, or the bartender reminds me of, or our waitress reminds me of, even if they don't, it's just a great way to bring up what you want to talk about. So remember, you want to root what you're going to talk about. Another tip is to create a story folder. Keep a folder with the past and present stories, and then fine-tune them, make them funnier. So if you have a story about an early childhood memory, if you've got a story about a struggle to get ahead, you got a story, whatever stories you have, fine-tune them and make them funnier. There's always words that you can replace, change. There's certain words that are just funnier than other words. So pick the funniest word, the word that captures something better. Comedians are excellent at this. Comedians know the word to use to get the best laugh out of it. So you want to go through your story and add and subtract words using the word that does it best. And ideally, the shorter you can make the story, the better. So if you can take a story that's normally a half an hour to tell it and turn it into a really jam-packed 3-minute story and just make it really, really tight and funny, that is your ultimate goal. Now, she expects you to be exaggerating. When you're telling a story, exaggeration is part of it, especially when you're telling an early childhood memory. So if you had a teacher who used to throw books when she was mad, you can say that she picked up the desk and threw the desk across the room. Whether or not you're lying or exaggerating, it doesn't matter. The story's not about whether or not she really threw the desk. It's about how you reacted to it when you were a kid. So don't be confined by the truth. Remember that. Whatever makes the better story, use. And don't limit yourself to your own stories. If you had something that happened to your brother or one of your friends or, an ex-girlfriend that was really funny, tell it. Say, hey, my brother, the funniest thing happened to him. I have to tell you this story. And tell it. And if it serves the purpose of creating a childhood memory or an early struggle to get ahead, it serves its purpose. It doesn't matter whether or not it happened to you or somebody else. A story is a story is a story. So create a story folder. Keep it on your desktop, and anytime you hear a story that's funny or something funny happens to you or something interesting, just write a little note to yourself and practice telling it. You can talk for hours with only 4 topics. I gave you 12 here, but you can literally mix and match 4 stories from any of the 12 topics and just keep talking. Ideally, you want to create a roadmap to keep the conversation moving towards your desired outcome. Now, if you're on a date with a girl, your desired outcome is probably to get physical with her. Maybe your desired outcome is to get her phone number if you're at a bar. I don't know, but you always want to be moving it towards your desired outcome. So as you choose the next topic you're going to be talking about, you want to be getting closer to your outcome. You don't want to, start off talking about something really sexual and then move away from it, and then by the end of the conversation you've totally diffused the sexuality and you're both talking about the weather. You always want to be moving forward. And also, when you find a winning combo, don't be afraid to keep using it. A lot of guys, they have really good conversations with women, and instead of going out and replicating it, they feel like, oh, I gotta be different this time. Use it. If it works, use it, and keep using it until it stops working. So let's show you how to do a 4-topic slide. A great starter topic is glorified gossip, in which you mention a story about how your best friend got caught cheating. Then you can move into rooting a childhood story and say something like, it's so funny though, the girl he cheated with looked just like my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Maher. I remember this one time in that class, I had the biggest crush on this girl, Katie, and on Valentine's Day I bought her this card, and she totally just ignored me, and I was so heartbroken. And I vowed that when I got older, I was going to make $1 million just so I can win Katie's heart. And even though I, no longer even know what Katie looks like, I still have that drive in me. I'm still very ambitious to go out there and make that money. And just I blame it on Katie though. So right there, you transitioned into future ambitions, and you can say, did you ever have anything like that? Do you think that something in your childhood has dictated, what you want to do with your life? Oh yeah, so what do you want to do? Where do you see? Like, how would you know when you've made it? So now you got her talking about her future ambitions. Now you can use this as an opportunity to cold read her, make observations about her. Really, I totally didn't see you as the kind of girl who wanted to be an accountant. And, you just strike me as the kind of girl who would want to, backpack Europe until she was, 35 and just, listening to music. And you just had that vibe about you. Oh, why do I have that vibe? And, she's just, I don't know. Why? You don't have that adventurous side? There's not a part of you that can imagine herself backpacking Europe. Of course, everybody has a part of themselves that can imagine that. So she'll say, yeah, I do. So why don't you never want to live out any of that side of you, that wild side? You transition towards sexuality. So can you see how those just 4 topics, you can go from glorified gossip to sexuality very easily and very quickly. So, those are my 4 favorite, actually, is glorified gossip, childhood story, transition to future ambitions, and then use it as an opportunity to cold read or make observations about her. Great way to quickly get rapport, attraction, and sexuality into your conversation. So what I want you to do is I want you to practice. The best way for you to begin telling stories and statements based off the topics in this article is to begin by choosing 4. Pick the 4 topics that resonate the most with you and create 4 stories that will allow you to introduce the topic into the conversation. I just did it really quickly on the spur of the moment without thinking on the previous slide, how I went from glorified gossip to early childhood memories to future ambitions to observations about her. And I did it with a few stories just intertwined. So pick these 4 stories. And now these are going to be your 4 practice topics. So don't be discouraged if you mess up the story, if you begin to feel like you're repeating yourself. Once you get comfortable focusing on 4 topics, then you can begin to focus on some of the other topics I'd outlined here. But you want to get good at using 4 because that's all you really need to keep a conversation going for quite a long time, especially if you're getting her chiming in. So that is my recommendation. Start with 4 topics.